Fabi, you were mentioning about fatigue and tiredness setting in, the inability to perhaps sit down and calculate at this point. But I have to say, this is the World Championship. This is the biggest stage. It decides the best player in the world. This is what we expect from the world number two and the world number three to figure out. But it clearly shows the aspects of the match, the psychological pressure that is on, the fatigue that sets in, the emotional and the physical toll that it has taken on these two players. Now we are currently on move 30, and we see that Ding has made the choice to move bishop e4. He still has 10 moves to make to meet time controls. The player has 2 hours to reach 40 moves. And then after that, an additional 60-minute gets added on the clock. We often see that it is the time scrambles reaching towards move 40 that often decide the game. And it looks like this one is going to be about that. There is no increment from the start of the game. It's only after move 60 that the players get a 30-second increment. So we are going to come down to those moments, those critical decisions. Bishop e4, and the eval bar says we're back to level.
Yeah, Bishop e4 was a correct choice by Ding Liren. And I hope that Jan stays away for just a second because I really need to show the variation that was missed, that there was a mistake because it was so complicated that you can't fault anyone for missing it. So I am going to go back in time. Let's bring up an analysis board really quickly. I will just rush through the variation. But at this point, after queen takes c4, knight of 3 was correct. But the reason why is crazy. And I was informed of this. Of course, I didn't find this myself. I would never pretend to. Takes, queen takes. It wasn't queen d5. It was queen h4, threatening mate in 1. You play queen d3. Black strikes with f5. Please take me. Your knight is loose on h5. You can't afford to do that. F takes g4 is a deadly threat. Your h pawn is pinned. And after queen f3, you defend. But after pawn takes, rook takes. Don't take a knight. There's rook takes g8 check. And the queen stares at the queen through the rook. So this would be a check and you win the queen. Instead, you trade everything. Checkmate is threatened, so you have to take. And then b3 wins at the end of the line because your knight is out of play. And if you bring your knight back, there's bishop a3, giving up your piece. And after pawn takes b2, b1 is unstoppable. Black wins the game. Okay, Jan, he missed this. It was super easy to find. This was like a 10-move variation, and this is the only winning path.
Yeah, this is insane stuff.
Line. Yeah.
No, this is a completely crazy line. I don't think that we can fault Jan at all for not spotting this line. I mean, it's super difficult, but I do think that not playing a6 was kind of very irresponsible because a6 was just a practical decision. So he's keeping his extra pawn, right? And after a6, what is the line that you have to calculate? Like, I actually thought he would play this quickly, but to play b4 quickly is very responsible because you're giving up your c4 pawn, and unless you see this whole knight f3 to the end, and you're either precise calculation to the very end, super genius line that you pointed out, I think you should play a6. b4 was a very strange decision, and now I think Jan really needs to be careful because it's a position where, as we saw, one mistake can change the evaluation a lot. He's still potentially in danger. Even though the position is balanced, and obviously Ding is in danger as well, f7 is hanging. You need to deal with that pawn, which is threatened at the moment. It's a big threat. If you lose that pawn, you might just lose the game. It couldn't have been taken in the move e4 because of knight to f3 specifically. That's why Ding played bishop to e4. And if you play f5 here, I think you lose the game. G takes f5. Because queen takes h5, rook g8, followed by queen takes b8. The move that Black should play is not instantly evident to me. How he deals with the threat of queen takes f7. I think Jan is in danger despite what the Velbar is saying. And if he keeps rushing, then yeah, he could easily lose. I mean, I don't understand this decision to rush every move. It's a world championship. You have usually one chance in your lifetime, maybe two. Like Jan has, obviously. This is his second world championship match. How can you play every move like it's a Title Tuesday game? It's really, these are responsible decisions to make.
Very big misses we've seen by both these players in the last few moves. Jan missing the most natural option of just defending it, the b5 pawn, keeping everything under control. All your ideas are still on the board. Ding would have had such a tough time to just respond to that little move that you were pointing out, Fabi. And instead, he goes for this line that requires complete precision. It requires you to to look at a variation that is at least 10 moves ahead with some very unnatural moves. And if you don't make them, then you allow your opponent back into the game. We saw another big miss by Ding, where in fact the Val bar would have completely turned around in his favor, the line with d5. So both players making inaccuracies. And even though the eval bar says it's level, it's far from an equal position. You're pointing out a direct threat on the board that Yan has to deal with. The f7 pawn is hanging, and simple defensive moves like rook coming to f8, defending the f7 pawn, do not do the job, because it's not just the f7 pawn, but also the b4 pawn that you need to watch out for now with the black pieces. Rook f8 would run into a move like queen takes b4. So definitely not an obvious way to actually fight against the most direct threat of picking up the f7 pawn.
Yeah, Jan should really be kicking himself for getting into such an unclear situation when he had complete control over the position. The position is the same, except he doesn't have the c pawn, and White's queen is more active. He could have had the same position with an extra c pawn and White's queen passively placed on c3, not particularly threatening Black, while here the queen is threatening 2 pawns. So Black, I guess the b4 pawn is the less important one, so Black should deal with the threat to the f pawn. But how do you do that? At this point, I prefer White's position. I don't particularly care what the evaluation is, because that's not the reality. The reality is that Jan has to find a way to deal with the threat. It's not obvious. It's really a very dangerous situation for him here.
Looks like the tables have really turned in Ding's favor right now, regardless of what the objective evaluation of the position is. Jan Nepomniatchi is currently in the resting area. He is definitely thinking about these problems that look like they're very self-inflicted with the last few moves that we saw by Jan with the black pieces so close to actually wrapping up the game. While we wait for Jan to return to the board and deal with the immediate threat on the board that Ding has of capturing the f7 pawn, we will go into a break, but you don't want to miss the action on the other side. We'll be right back.